Hey there, folks. Gary Keith, your Clarksburg City Councilman for a very, very short time remaining. uh, we got an election here in a couple days, and I think to a voter who has not been like really involved, some of the goings on of the last, especially few months, but even maybe the last few years on the city council could be very confusing. Um, Me in particular, I could probably be very confusing as I've flip-flopped and admittedly completely changed my direction and changed my ideas on several things. And I just wanted to make a quick video before this election to let people know, I don't know, kind of sum up the issues that I think we've had that are important to this decision you're making on this next set of council people you're going to bring in. Here towards the end of the video, I'm also going to go through the list of candidates and just give you kind of my take on them. This will probably make some people angry that I'm even making this video, and I'm sure I'll get a bunch of comments of you don't care what my opinion is and blah blah, whatever. If you don't care what my opinion is, now is a great time for you to hit stop, hit the road, go watch something else. If you do want to know a little bit more about what's going on in this election and why my attitude has changed so dramatically, maybe I can take a few minutes of your time here to give you some of that information. I do have a few notes down here in my hand, so don't think I'm just coming completely off the cuff here. It's just one page though. I got a few things written on it just to make sure I didn't forget as I started talking here. I don't want to do a bunch of editing. I'm also trying to be a little lighthearted here. Just sitting in my garage, I was actually out here working on this pontoon boat I just bought. I bought a 1998 hoopty pontoon boat that I'm redoing, so it's my project for the early summer here. Hopefully I can have it on the water by mid-June. It was a good deal, maybe. We'll see how much work I have to do to it. Right now it still seems like a good deal. But anyway, we're here to talk about the city, and I want to go all the way back to the beginning. And now remember, folks, this is all things from my perspective and my opinion. So I'm not giving you any opinions of the city of Clarksburg, and I am not giving you any opinions of any of the candidates or anybody else. This is just me. So here we go. So I guess talking about the past, I'll more focus on myself than other people because I think, you know, that's the most accurate way to approach it. I came into wanting to be on city council like a bull. That's how I operate sometimes. You know, I have a background in retail management. For people that don't know, that's, you know, the biggest part of my life. That's what I did, was retail management. Well, I shouldn't say the biggest part of my life, because I've now been a 911 dispatcher and a real estate agent for a pretty darn long time too, so it's probably about to overtake that. But I was the store manager of a Kmart at one time, and then I was actually a district manager for a truck stop chain down south. I had some pretty big jobs, and what I am that a lot of people are not is a manager. And we'll get into this concept in this conversation a little bit more. Like, if I need to get something done and I have a group of people, or in some cases myself, I'm able to sit down, come up with a plan, be the true leader, and jump right in there and get it done. Like, there's no hem-hauling, there's no second guessing. Like, when you work in the world of retail, you have the power to make things happen, especially in, you know, store manager and district manager positions. Nobody, in many cases, nobody is going to get these things done for you. You have got to have the power to come up with the plan, execute and hopefully get some people to follow you so you don't have to do it all yourself. And I think that's a big difference between me and a lot of these people. But I came into wanting to be a council person with a pretty narrow focus. And at the time, I didn't really feel that way, but looking back, I definitely had a very narrow focus in the beginning. Very few things that I cared about, but I was very passionate about them, and I was bound and determined I was going to make these things happen. And that was probably in this order. Number one thing was the needle exchange. We had a needle exchange in downtown Clarksburg that was an absolute disaster. Any day of the week, you could go and see people sleeping in front of it. You know, needles openly on the sidewalk. You could go into any city park in town or under any bridge in this town and find needles because they were in high quantity on the street. They were made into a, you know, something that no one valued, and they were one-time use, get dropped, and, you know, wherever the user was standing when they used it, that's where the needle would sit. And I understand harm reduction programs to a point, but, you know, I was told then that we're going to have this huge outbreak of all these diseases and HIV and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, all I've seen from me ending the needle exchange has been positive. And I say me because this wasn't a vote of council, really. This is something I went in like a bull or a missile and just made it happen. I thought it was, well, let's not even get into that. Let's not get too much into my resume. Let's go quick here. The mission was my other goal. I thought the mission was destroying downtown Clarksburg, and I was determined to change the policies of the mission, which we did. Encampments, there used to be any place you could walk into a wooded area in the city of Clarksburg, there was usually 3 or 4 backpackers living there. And, you know, that is cleared up at this point. And once again, I'd say these are all my top accomplishments. But they're really not things that I did as a city councilman. The city council just gave me the soapbox that I needed to stand on and the attention to get these things done. Really, those 3 issues, none of those, I didn't cure any of those problems as a result of being a city councilman. I just was given the speaker box or the soapbox to go out there and stand on, and people started listening. And I cured those things probably not in the most professional way. It was kind of making change through the mob and chaos, but it worked. So that's why no matter what, anybody liked me or not, I think I had some value to the city of Clarksburg at that time. In 2019, I think I was the right person to be elected. Even though I won in a tie, I'm sure somebody will say that in the comments too, so let me just beat you to it. I was not even really elected. I won in a tie and won on basically a coin flip. But those 3 things I made happen outside of city council. And the one thing that I'm pretty proud of that I think we fixed the right way was the police department. And, you know, the police department was just not being run correctly. And I don't even blame anyone specifically. I don't want to go back and blame the former chief or even the former administration. They had just kind of lost their way, or even the former city councils. I don't want to blame any of them. The police department had just kind of lost its pride and its direction. Doesn't mean we didn't have good police officers. Doesn't mean they weren't trying to do the right thing. It just wasn't going the right direction. And I think, you know, that could go back to a lot of different reasons. I don't think that past chief was allowed to run it the way he wanted to. I don't think his budget was being... I don't think his budget was important to the city, like you could hear me talk about many departments, like Public Works, where everything was decrepit and broken. You know, we're 30 years behind on the maintenance schedule of things, you know, things that should have been replaced. Police department, fire department, public works, it's all the same. So you can't blame individual people. It was a team effort of everyone screwing up the police department, in my opinion. And I think it's a lot better now, but we're really, over the last 2 years, I hate to say this, but we're headed down the same road where we had this super high morale and everybody was cool and everybody was happy, and you know, me and the other members of city council were glad to do these special duty raises, and we were talking about more and more raises for the police, and we've kind of lost that momentum. And I'm telling you folks, if I can pass, I'll probably talk in this video a couple times about things I want to pass on to the people that are going to remain on council and any new members that end up on there. The police department, it's the most important thing in our current state in this situation we're in Clarksburg, because if that police department backslides and goes back towards what it was previously, all the changes that have been made, and I know in the comments we're going to see people say what changes, but whatever, you know, I'm not going to fight with people. I probably won't even comment again on this video after I put it up, but all the changes that have been made could be undone so quickly. All you council candidates, people who stay on council, and citizens demand that this council treat this police department correctly. Chief Kitty knows what he's doing. Jason Weber knows what he's doing. Don't cut their budget. You know, keep up with raises. Keep up with these special duty things. Make people want to work for the city of Clarksburg. You know, give these guys a little bit of props. We do a pretty good job of it right now. A lot of our council people like to, you know, congratulate officers and the chief and things that they do well, like to bring them up in meetings, and I like to do that. And also with my small reach on the internet, I like to be very positive about the police department. I mean, these guys have the hardest job in the world. I'm sorry, you know, I'm sure in the comments we're going to have some argument over that, but I think in this, especially in this decade with, you know, all the problems in the world, the police have taken it on the chin more than any other profession. And you know, the more we can do to try to encourage people to get into that line of work and make Clarksburg a good place to work for them, the better off we are going to be. Because I'm telling you folks, if the police department backslides, any positive that's happened back to 2019 could just be undone so fast. And these, you know, we got some mid-level people. I don't want to name drop people right here in a video, but I think about some of these people that are sergeants that are, you know, very capable, and I don't know, like, I don't know how we could do without them. And I won't drop their names, but a couple of them immediately come to mind. These mid-level people, not lieutenants, you know, not patrolmen, right in the middle, some of the PFCs and sergeants, and these guys, we got to make these people stay, because if they go, it's the beginning of the end. When you start losing your mid-level people in any organization, any football team or basketball team, or, you know, retail store, or especially police department, fire department, public works, the most important people, I don't care what anybody says, are your mid-level people. Your new people are going to follow them and learn from them. Your leaders have to have them to make things happen. And, you know, I've advocated a couple times for even additional raises for those people in the middle, the sergeants. And I don't know. Once again, I'm going too far on one subject. That this is going to be too long a video, but we got to concentrate on those people. Anyway, moving on. So when we first came on, 2019, when my group was elected, we elected Ryan Kennedy as the mayor. And I know there's mixed feelings out there about Ryan Kennedy, and some people get mad that I'm even giving him props. But Ryan Kennedy did have leadership skills. After elected, we sat down, we had an agenda. Ryan was very good at counting votes, figuring out who he needed and who he needed to convince. We stayed on track. He knew, or he came up with kind of a schedule of meetings, when to bring things up, what order to do them in, how we needed to do them, when they needed to be on the agenda. He did a great job, like, to me, of explaining things in a way that, like I said, I was kind of narrow focused on those things. So he did a good job of explaining things to get me either on his side, or sometimes I wasn't on his side. In the beginning, I was the swing vote on the council when I first came on. Like, we had one solid block on one side and one solid block on the other side. And at least from my perspective, maybe other people don't agree, the game was convince Gary to be on your side and you will win the vote. And it gave me a little bit of extra power as a councilman, because everybody knew they needed my vote. But I also think I handled that position well, because as a swing vote, I think I came into every situation very open-minded. But when we start down that conversation, that's the beginning of when something started to go a little bad between me and, well, I mean, I have to use names, Jimmy Marino and Lily Junkins. It started to go a little bad clear back then, because oftentimes they would bring up darker things that I was not willing to go for, that I didn't feel were right, or I felt were over the line, or I just didn't like. And I had no problem, like, I think people on the internet get this, because I snap back at people a good bit, I think people get this impression of me like I'm some mean jerk, and I'm like snapping at people all the time, when people who actually know me know that all these things I say, like, if I say something nasty to you on the internet after you said something nasty to me, I'm probably saying it with a smile on my face and laughing, and, like, I don't know, it doesn't come across in text sometimes, but several ideas and things that the mayor wanted to do, I shouldn't say the mayor, I got to use names here because we're talking about two different mayors, but things that Jimmy Marino and Lily wanted to do, I would just be like, no. You know, we're not doing that. I'm not in on that. No, 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 no. That happened lots of times. I'm not going to sit here and give you examples, but I probably got on board of some things I shouldn't have. But if people knew all the things I didn't get on board of, so many of these things happened in just conversation that I can't even bring them up now. The only one I brought up online was the Chad Weaver thing, making him the consultant who was going to come in and tell us who we need to get rid of. Oh man, that would have been the worst one. Then, like, I laughed hard about that one the night they tried to do it. Like, no, like, I didn't even know about it before the meeting. I think they must have been afraid to tell me. And let's not get into specific subjects though. Let's keep this moving. I'm sorry. So I did get on board with some bad and unnecessary things in hindsight, but like I said, it could have been a lot worse. People won't want to hear that I was the adult in the room a whole bunch of times, but okay, whatever. Believe me or don't. And I got on board with the Martin Howe thing. Now, I was on board with suspension and investigation. Of course, I was never on board with firing or coming to a deal and agreeing. That came down to now that I know more about how a city works, to look back and remember that Martin Howe's negotiations for how he left occurred in a private setting, I think in a restaurant. And I think, now I wasn't there, so don't quote me on this, but I think the only people there representing the city were Ryan Kennedy, Jimmy Marino, and Lily Junkins, negotiating the package for Martin to leave. at the time, it's like he's the city manager, so who does it once we suspend him? At the time, it made sense to me that, oh, it would be the mayor. Looking back on that now, oh boy, how ridiculous that seems to me now. Like, I wouldn't have went to that negotiation then, but looking back on it now, it seems like it was nearly criminal. But anyway, let's move on from that. I want to get out of the past and just talk about today. The charter amendments also, like, I'm not a lawyer, and a couple of the charter amendments I felt pretty strongly about, and a couple of them I thought were just the stupidest ideas ever, and they've already started backfiring. And I don't think that's over. I think these guys that are in there now are going to end up in the same situation we are, and they're going to end up losing that 5th year, so we're going to end up with another 1-year election because these charter amendments just have trash and hair all over them. Like, they were done so badly, and I take partial responsibility for that, not being smart enough at the time to understand how bad they actually were. Just jumping in to city council and starting to do such big things, it was reckless. But you know, I had people around me who I thought were giving me right information, and it just turns out that they were probably just as clueless as me. So it was bad. You know, some of these are definitely going to come back to bite us. Some of them I'm not sure if they'll stand the test of time. The one I hated ever since the beginning was the election of the mayor, and I won't go into the reasons. But if you know, you know. I'm not going to sit here and explain it again. I've explained it lots of times. The direct election of the mayor was a huge mistake, and it's gonna come back to bite us too. But anyway, so anyway, I think I went into some unnecessary and bad things in hindsight, but we also did a whole bunch of really good stuff. We did a lot of stuff that needed to be done, and aside from the things that I don't like that Jimmy and Lily did, and I won't even give Lily too much credit. I'm sorry if I have to be a jerk like that, but I'll give Jimmy a lot of credit. Despite these disagreements, I respect Jimmy Marino, and I think he's always got a voice in his ear that is encouraging him to go after some vendettas and some revenge, and that's always biting at him, his ankles. But I don't think that's Jimmy's main focus. Jimmy is a good guy, and Jimmy is a smart guy that understands how the city works. And that's why it's hard for me to say anything negative about Jimmy. And you're probably not going to hear me say too much of that. He's made me mad a few times. We've had a couple fights. But all in all, overall, this is a good man who worked his whole life at the city in multiple positions and knows how things work and how things are supposed to work. And if he can stay on track and not go back to his voices in his head of the past and wanting to fight these old battles, most of the time I think he's probably been one of the best forces on the city council. So I'm going to give him that as his positive before we go to the next stage of this story, where I'm going to be a little bit negative about him. But remember, I respect Jimmy, and I'm not saying anything super bad about him. I have much less respect for Lily, who I think was just chosen as the family member who had some momentum because she had been the head of the teachers union during the strike. And I'm not sure she ever wanted to be on city council. She always had like an attitude, never tried to dive into things, never tried to learn things, just voted the way Jimmy told her to and showed up, and was never really very nice about it. And it is what it is. I'm not going to spend this video dogging her either. I'm done there. That's all I'm going to say. Moving on to the facts. So I really think we did some good things. In hindsight, we did some bad things also. Lots of things I would do different if I could go back and redo them again. Next election comes over. CCA takes over big time. These guys, you know, they campaigned by going out and picking up trash and showing their involvement in the community. And I'm not faulting them at all for that. It was a good strategy during an election to go out and do that, and it worked. You know, people appreciated what they were doing, and they made some real strides, and they made a lot of things look so much better. Without the involvement of CCA, I'm not sure we could have got the encampments cleared up as well as we did. And I give a lot of that credit to Wayne and Jerry and Will, and also, you know, a couple other people. I don't have like a list in front of me, but Tracy Brady comes to mind. These people, without them, it would have been hard to stop the encampment issues. They were an absolute big part of it. And this propelled them into notoriety and got them elected. I mean, it got them elected. Let's be honest about it. And, you know, CCA was founded by Chad Weaver and Lily. And I think Jimmy may have had some involvement. His wife, I know, did. But they came up with this idea, and they formed it. And it was, you know, if y'all don't know, it's always from the beginning been, it's been a platform to create candidates and put the spotlight on yourself. I mean, I hope that doesn't make anybody mad that I'm saying that, but that's what it was. Let's get real, folks. It really was. And it worked. It was good. Good job. Good political maneuvering. It did great things. Once again, I'm not going to say anything bad about CCA. We'll just move on from that. But I'll tell you the bad thing about it. CCA guys, Will, Wayne, and Jerry, got in the same position that I was in, that these guys always want to throw up in your face, you owe us something. We got you elected. Now, in my case, I think I owe them a lot less than they think. And they love to throw that in my face. One of them in particular, Justine, loves to throw in my face, oh, we made you. Like, shut up. Yeah. So the story of our election was, at the last minute, they were supporting someone else. Well, they had a couple that they were supporting. They were kind of playing their cards right. Pretty close to the end, I think they decided that I was the best horse to ride, and my name got published in this Clarksburg City Council news thing. And, you know, Ryan DeBar and Mike Brown had something to do with that. I don't know what exactly. It's a Martin Schaefer production, and it got put on like every porch in Clarksburg. And it said, go out and vote for Jimmy Marino, Lily Junkins, and Gary Keith. Now, I had a tie. I didn't win. I had a tie, and I didn't ask to be put on there. Was I working with them towards the end? Absolutely. But I didn't really care if they got elected, folks. I was not like I think it comes off to people who don't know like I was in their pocket, and I was never in their pocket. Now, that's what they wanted, but I was never in their pocket. This thing that they printed that told people to vote for me was at the absolute last minute, when they felt that I was in the lead, I think. They were much more previously to that supporting Danny Knight and Mary Mayer, in my opinion. I was the last minute choice. And the newsletter sealed it when they put my name on there, and I'm sure I gained some votes from it. There's no doubt about that. I gained a few. But I'm sure I also lost some votes about it. When it first came out, I was actually pretty ticked off about it. As time went on, and the stuff that was in there I kind of agreed with, it was like, okay, it's fine, I guess. But this was not, in my opinion, like some huge favor putting me on there, because the connections that it gave me definitely didn't just gain me votes, it definitely lost me some votes too. So maybe I would have won fair and square without 2 recounts and a coin flip if I didn't have my name on that document. Because like I said, I didn't ask for it, so I never bought into the we made you thing, because I don't feel like they made me. One benefit that I had from the multiple recounts that I don't think any other candidate probably has ever had, is on that second recount we did, because it was so close. I stood behind these women counting these votes and looked at nearly every ballot. And granted, there was a whole bunch of ballots that said Jimmy Marino, Lily Junkins, Gary Keith. But I'll tell you this, folks, there was a whole lot of ballots where I was grouped with Chad Sigmund, D'Annunzio. There was a lot of them where I was grouped with Tyler Turner. I was, from the beginning, the centrist candidate. And, you know, some people may not agree with that, but looking at those ballots, and probably why I ended up, you know, so far in the middle in a tie, is because there were, I think, probably the ultra conservative Trump type people who liked my approach, regardless of which side of the million-year feud they were on between the Howes and the Marinos. No matter which side of that feud they were on, a lot of those people supported me. Now, I don't know. It's a complicated thing to talk about, but I saw every ballot of people who voted for me, and I know in my heart I didn't owe these people anything. So don't tell me you owe us, do what we say kind of thing. You know, send me text messages at 4 o'clock in the morning ranting with 4 paragraphs about how could you turn against us, we made you. Like, I swear to God, folks, it's like I joined the frickin' mafia. Like, okay, so as long as things were going good, I just let it go. If I disagreed with something with them, I just brushed it off, laughed at them. The main person who liked to rub this in my face and yell at me, I just wrote her off pretty much. I would respond and talk to her sometimes, but she had ticked me off to the point by saying that I had no respect for her, and I, you know, got mad at her a couple times, and she acted like maybe she was kind of taking back the things that she said about them making me. But when she got mad, it would always come back up. Just up until a couple months ago, it came back up again. And, you know, whatever, you made me. If you want to believe that, that's great. You're the kingmaker. But I'm telling all you folks that are running right now, if they're being nice to you behind closed doors, just be prepared for that and don't fall for it. You don't owe them shit. I'm sorry. No bad words on this video. I'm trying to not be like my normal personality. You need to come into this council if you're a new member and be an independent new member. Don't let them tell you that you owe them something. And I think that's why we took such a big swing in the next election when Jerry and Wayne and Will were elected, because these are CCA guys. They're about to get the same treatment I got. You owe us. We made you. And once again, this mafia strategy failed, because you brought in 3 people who obviously, maybe right the first part they thought they owed you something, but they got over it real quick. And, you know, those guys, I don't have anything negative to say about anything, but they're very different than the first council I worked with. Jerry is very much like me. He's very open-minded. He's very aggressive, and he wants to get things done. And like me, you know, he gets mad when other people don't seem to understand or don't listen or can't see the forest for the trees, is the old joke that we use. Sorry, my garage door's beeping. I don't know why. It wants me to close it. But, you know, Wayne, once again, I've joked and called Wayne Clarksburg's Jesus. Like, he's a terrific guy, but Wayne is the most cautious, doesn't want to break any rules, doesn't want to make anybody mad, doesn't want to offend anybody, and it's hard to be a leader when you have that attitude. And please, I hope I don't make you mad, Wayne, but that's my assessment of you. I'd be glad to hear your assessment of me. I could give people a lot worse assessments than that. Wayne is one of the best guys in the world, but he doesn't want to offend people, and it's hard to be the leader of anything if you think too much about everybody's feelings, because no decision in management or leadership makes everybody happy. Somebody's always going to be mad, and Wayne just doesn't want to make anybody mad, and I feel like it just leaves him on the sideline lots of times. Like, he doesn't want to be on the winning side or the losing side. He just wants to kind of be in the middle, and that's fine. You know, I'm not knocking the guy. It is what it is. And since we're on the subject, I'll assess Will coming in too. Will is like the most, what do I want to say? Will is the most ethical and on-brand person that I've served with by far. Like, Will believes certain things, and nothing you could say to Will is going to get him to flip. And Will is the guy who will point out something immediately if he disagrees with it. Not afraid to speak up, but it's been hard to work with him as a council person, because it's hard to get his support on anything. And maybe that's a positive thing. You know, it's okay to slow things down and be very conservative. And, you know, Will is a guy that I respect very much. And I think, you know, when this next council goes trying to decide on who the next mayor is going to be, it would be hard to pick one better than Will Hyman. Just my suggestion. But as a number, when you need to get to 4 to make things happen, Will is not a very good teammate. Will always is kind of out on the fringe a little bit, and I'm out on the fringe a lot too, but I feel like I'm a little more flexible than Will when I feel like something needs to get done. Like, Will is hardcore, and I'm not, once again, just like Wayne, I'm not saying that as a negative thing. That's what you get with Will. You're gonna get even keel, man. He's right there. He's gonna be, if you ask him the same question 10 times over 10 years, I have a feeling you might get the exact same answer, the same wording, exactly the same way. And it won't be sugar-coated. It'll be exactly how he feels, but it's going to be consistent. While we're talking about the current council, Mr. Malfajo, you know, he's definitely there to do the right thing. And I think he kind of got sour on council during the first 2 years that we were there, because he was always on the outside, and, you know, Kennedy and Marino and Lilly always treated him like a second-class citizen, like his opinion didn't matter, and he made them mad a lot, and they came up with ways to control him, but that's a whole different story. A lot of respect for Mr. Malfajo too. I can honestly say I've hardly worked with anyone on this council that I haven't highly respected. The Clarksburg voters have not done a bad job of picking people, all for different reasons and all for different skill sets, but you've never picked anybody really, really bad, in my opinion. That's including the ones that were on there when we got on there, Ferrari and Marshall and yeah, whatever. But anyway, moving on from that. So when those guys first got in, it immediately took hold of UOCCA. We're the reason you're here, in my opinion. Now, these guys may say I'm wrong, but I begged these guys, begged them, don't make Jimmy the mayor. Like, Jimmy, like I said a few minutes ago, the positive things is probably, at that point, after Frank Ferrari was gone, probably the smartest person on that council, and has the most knowledge and the most idea what's going on in the city and what needs to be fixed. But he also has so much vendetta and revenge in his head that it's hard for him to ignore the voices of people around him who expected him to go for that revenge. So, and once again, I'm not really saying anything bad about Jimmy. I think he's been a great councilman, but I don't think he needed to be the mayor. I begged those guys not to make him the mayor. Malfajo would have been a better mayor, in my opinion, because he would have been in the middle, he would have communicated, and he would have been fair. I would have been a better mayor. Now, it's hard to tell what I would have gotten done as mayor. I can tell you we would have done a lot more stuff. Once again, bull mentality, retail store manager, I would have been pushing the agenda and you would have been either voting for things on my agenda or publicly going against them. I wouldn't have kept anything off the agenda. We would have been moving and shaking. So I don't know. Maybe I would have been a bad mayor. Maybe I would have been doing too many things and making too big of moves. But the problem with Jimmy, he felt like he was the king at that point, and immediately started overstepping his powers as the mayor. Immediately started directing things that he shouldn't be directing. Immediately got this different attitude where I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to listen. Immediately tried to convince especially these new guys, and even me to a point, because I was used to being on the team in charge and being on the right side of things and getting things on the agenda without a fight, but trying to resist putting things we wanted on the agenda. Not even letting things come to a vote. And I'm sure they'll disagree with me on that, but whatever, you know, especially these new guys though. I think there was at least a time, and they may disagree with me, where they just kind of were there to stay in their lane. And I mean, that's when you're new to something, that's how it's going to be, anything. But that's when the relationship started to go bad between me and the oligarchy. So the relationship started to go bad, I think, though, in more detail, because I think they got in their head, you know, we got these CCA guys now. We made all these guys. We don't need the last guy we made who goes against us all the time. Let's go with these guys who are going to be pushovers, and, you know, screw Gary. We're done with that. We don't have to mess with him anymore. Maybe that's not what they were thinking, but that's the impression that I got. Did that work? For a little while, I think it did. For a little while, it worked. And then, after the CCA guys started to get a little more comfortable, then those personalities that I just talked about started to come out. Jerry and me started being the ones angry that we weren't doing anything, you know, asking for things to happen, putting things on the agenda without their permission, which makes them crazy. You know, Wayne started doing his thing that we just talked about. Will started to show his personality of, you know, whether you look at it as a positive thing or a negative thing, it's Will's way or the highway. You know, and once again, that's not a negative thing, Will. It's Will's way or the highway, though. And what we became as a council is a completely ineffective body, where they had somewhat, to a point, made me negative towards them. Mr. Malfajo is always going to be negative towards them because of how the way they treated him for 2 years. And now you got these two very outside personalities, different personalities with Wayne and Will, and you got Jerry hooking up with me, and it just all went to hell, folks. it just, I mean, honestly, the city council at that point became a completely ineffective body. We just went completely to hell. From that point, we haven't been able to do anything, in my opinion. So with that first council, you know, we sat down with Ryan Kennedy, had an agenda, had a plan, had, you know, work sessions where we would say, you know, this is what we want to do, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to implement it. Complete change after the change of mayors and councils. We became completely unable to do anything. And that's not an exaggeration. The very, very, very few things that we did achieve in the last couple years, it's a miracle that we achieved any of them, because we couldn't agree on anything. And even the things that we did achieve, I think we negotiated so much to get people to agree on every little thing, like the business grant program that was kind of my idea and became such a perverted piece of crap by the end. I didn't even want to vote for it. I did, just to put it through, but if you go back, you know, I quit the committee. I didn't even want to do it. I was very angry about it. And that's probably the biggest achievement of this council, those business grants. And, you know, I'll take some responsibility for that because I was a big part of it, but what a piece of crap piece of legislation that was, folks. That was shit. Gosh, I'm sorry. That's twice. I'll go back and edit these out. That was terrible. The business grant thing started as a good idea. It got worse and worse and worse and worse. By the end, I'm glad we benefit a few businesses, but when we see one of the businesses that benefited out there selling things that we bought them on Facebook Marketplace, and that's just the one we know about. Who knows how that money's been misused? I have no idea how that money's been used. I'll bet nobody on this council does either. We couldn't name 10 things that have been bought with that money, I bet, as a group. I mean, all members of the council couldn't come up with 10 things as a group. You know, it went to businesses that it probably shouldn't have went to for ethic reasons. It was a complete hairy ball of fur. It was terrible. A terrible, terrible, terrible achievement. And that's, gosh, folks, it's one of the reasons that I didn't even want to run again. You know, how am I going to go out there and tell people, re-elect me for all the great things I did for Clarksburg in 2019? Like, I haven't done crap for you in the last 2 years, because I came in with this narrow focus of these 4 or 5 things that I was bound and determined to do, and I got those things done pretty fast with the help of Ryan Kennedy and actually having a plan, an agenda, and moving these things forward. But since then, since this new council came on, we haven't done anything. We're useless. Like, we have been a terrible council. So I'm a terrible liar, folks. I give way too much information and way too much truth a lot of the time. And there's no way I could go out and ask people to vote for me and say, look at all these things I did in 2019. And when they say to me, Gary, what about the things you've done in 22 and 23? Well, ma'am or sir, we suck, and we haven't done anything in the last 2 years. We've just sat up there on our cans and fought. So re-elect me. No. I mean, looking at the achievements of the last 2 years of this council, I wouldn't vote for myself. We did a terrible job. This has been a terrible council. It's been a complete failure. And, you know, anyway, back to how it became a complete failure. I think one of the things, probably the last straw on their end for where they just decided they hated me, was Bread Imperial. Because once again, on the Bread Imperial situation, I was in the middle. There was a situation with Bread Imperial, some personal stuff about him, I won't get into that, that they wanted to push as part of the election. However, they didn't want their fingerprints on it. So they, and I won't say who, we'll just say they, started having information put out by other people and shadow profiles and actually physically handing out USBs, because I'm the big mouth. A USB came to me with a whole bunch of paperwork on it that was mostly trash. That pretty well backfired, because when I was given this USB and I went and looked at the information on it, I didn't agree with it. And in very much Gary Keith style, what did I do? I called Bread Imperial and had him come over to my office. I showed him the information and handed him the USB. I told him who gave it to me, and I told him how they planned to use it. It's just who I am, folks. It wasn't right, okay? It wasn't right. And I was not like some big Bread Imperial supporter. I didn't even know the guy before he started running. And a lot of the things he wanted to do, I liked. And I knew just from his attitude running that if Bread Imperial would have got on that council, we would have had a completely different council. Especially if we would have got Bread Imperial and Jerry, both. Like, I don't even remember who came in last in that election. But if I had Bread Imperial and Jerry, I can tell you, I feel like we would have been aggressive and motivated, and 3 people with leadership abilities that would have pushed an agenda forward. Like, I don't know if we could have got a 4th vote. I feel like we could have got Malfa Joe because he really liked Bread Imperial, and that would have been our 4, and we could have made things happen, and it would have been probably a great 2 years in a great council, but it didn't happen. Bread Imperial didn't win. I don't know if that was any effect of what they did, but I was not against Brett Imperial. I could see what kind of council person he would be, and I wanted him. I, at the time, could not see what kind of councilman Jerry was going to be. I didn't really want him, to be quite truthful with you. Sorry, Jerry. But the three of us would have been a force. And I feel like Malfa Joe would have been with us. And if everybody else didn't want to play, wanted to take their balls and go home, that would have been fine. We would have had our four, and things would have been happening. There would have been an agenda. There would have been true leadership. And, you know, things would have happened. But anyway, hindsight 2020. As many good things as I say about Jimmy as a council person, Jimmy was a terrible mayor. I'm sorry. Jimmy was not a leader. Jimmy is smart, but he can't get people on his side. He's nasty to people. He's sarcastic. He's passive aggressive. He rubs people very much the wrong way. If you disagree with him in any way, he's going to be completely nasty to you. He'll be nice about it, but he just feels like he's right about everything, and that's fine. I'm like that to a point too, but I feel like I can be talked over to the other side, and I think it's a lot harder to talk Jimmy over to the other side. And I'm not saying everybody is not a good leader, and just that you're not a good leader is not like some huge insult. It's just a matter of getting people to follow you. And Jimmy could not get anyone to follow him as the leader of this council. As the mayor, he has been, I mean, terrible. Like, we just can't, we've never had a real plan. We've never had a real agenda. We've never like had goals. Like right at the beginning, we sat down and we tried to do it. We had everybody come up with lists, and we tried to make one first list, and the plan was once we achieve these 5 or 6 things, I think it was, then we'll do this again and make another list. But every time we had a work session, it was a useless waste of time. We didn't achieve things. We couldn't agree on things. If we did get something done, there was so much negotiation that it just, you know, ruined every idea to the point that it wasn't even worth it anymore. And, you know, I started back then to become very negative about this council. And, you know, so that was the end for them, I think, the Brett Imperial thing. I think after that, they were done with me. Now, they still felt like they needed me to a point, so they still tried to work with me, but there was definitely a change there. They were mad at me over telling Brett Imperial what happened. They were very mad at me. So fast forward, I got to make this video shorter. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it and cut some stuff out. But the city manager issue. We had so much trouble hiring a city manager, and now we're going to get to where we got to the point that I was done and ready to completely turn on them, because I'd already turned on them behind closed doors and stopped voting with them, and, you know, was fed up with their attitudes. But I wasn't coming out there publicly against them until the city manager thing. So on the bright side, for those of you watching, we have a spectacular new city manager now. That's the bright side. But I can tell you, without the events that happened during her hiring, she would have never been hired, because there was no intention of this council to pay anyone the amount of money that she ended up getting paid until they felt pressure from what I wanted to do and had to go with one of the options that we had to shut me down. Okay, so what did I want to do? We couldn't hire a city manager. We couldn't get people to agree to pay enough to get anyone really qualified, and all of the candidates that we went through all that time, I can't even tell you off the top of my head how long it was. It was 2 rounds. We're talking over a year of trying to hire somebody. We could not find anyone qualified within our price range. So, being the manager and the leader and fed up and tired of this, I came up with a new plan. I said, okay, if we can't find anybody using the requirements that we have right now, then we need to find somebody to take over this job that is a great leader and a manager, even if they're not college educated, and give this job to somebody. And my intention was to combat the question of how do you hire somebody that is not college educated or not, doesn't have a complete 4-year degree. Well, my answer to that was going to be, we're also going to hire an assistant city manager who's also going to be an attorney. And we had someone in mind for that too. Of course, we would have had to interview, but we had people lined up that fit the bill perfectly. A great leader and a great attorney that I think would have propelled the city just as well as a new city manager like we're getting now. Is it the same thing? No. But there was just not an appetite to pay someone over like $105,000. That was like the ceiling. I'm telling you right now, folks. People may come back and say I'm not telling the truth about that, but that was the ceiling. If anybody said over that, they weren't even considered. Now, after our fight, they went back through the resumes and said, okay, we got to hire one of these people, whatever it's going to take. And I finally got on board with that too. And I don't want it to come off sounding like I was handpicking these people, like without interviewing them. This is at the end of 2 rounds, over a year of interviewing people, trying to find the qualified person. And folks, the qualified person just didn't exist at that price range. So we either sit around with our thumbs up, we either sit around to do nothing, or we get this thing done somehow. And once again, leadership skills and taking the bull by the horns, I came up with a plan nobody else could. We were just about to start taking applications again. We were going to relist it. I mean, really, folks? Our police chief, who is probably one of the most vital people in our whole city government, is wasting his time as our interim city manager while he needs to be in the police department. And we're going to start taking applications again? A 3rd round? A 3rd failure of hiring someone? No, folks. No. We had to come up with a plan. Now, they didn't like the person that I came up with. The rest of the council did. I had 5 votes to hire this person, lacking the mayor and vice mayor. Everyone else was on board with hiring this person. Now, so much drama was created over it, and it was made into such a big deal that this person decided he didn't want the job because he didn't want to be harassed for the rest of his life and have to be, subject to, I don't know. He decided he didn't want the job. Let's just go there. Anyway, that was the end of the end when I was the only one, I feel like, that was taking action and making things happen. And they crossed me that hard. And Lily Junkins has the nerve to get up there and call me a criminal, corrupt. That was the end for me. So then it's like, all right, the gloves are off now. Now, before I was just being quiet and I didn't like you all and I was just waiting, doing my time, waiting for this to be over. But you get up and call a person like me a criminal and corrupt. Now it's a bare knuckles fight, okay? Now we're no longer friends. Like, there's no longer any seal there for me to be on Team Lily. Like, when I stood up for things that you did, I mean, you didn't do very much. Your biggest achievement, I guess, was having the bus shelter torn down while people were sitting in it. Throwing all those poor people out in the rain and out in the hot sun because you didn't like the kind of people that were sitting at the bus stop. But I kept my mouth shut. I even defended you and fought with some people online about it. And blamed Centra and said we didn't have that power. We did. I was just defending you because I'm a team guy. Should I have defended you on that? No! It was terrible. Can you imagine worse optics for anything? Like, why are you just want to take shots at poor people? I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know about it until after the bus shelter was already ripped out. And an apology to anyone that I debated with about it, defending it. I never defended the action. I defended that Lily didn't have the power to do that, which really was a lie. She shouldn't have the power to do that, but she did. She asked for something to be done that was not within her scope, which those people do a lot, and everyone went along with it, so she had the power. I put myself, I'll take responsibility for that. I defended her, and I was willing to go down with the ship on that team move. And I regret that. So anyone, Brett Imperial, Ryan DeBar, Mike Brown, Tracy Brady, people that I remember speaking about with it and defending Lily's actions, I apologize to you. I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong and when I was on the wrong side, and I didn't make that decision, but because I was part of the team, I felt like I needed to defend Lily, and I shouldn't have done that. She was wrong. That was disgusting. I'm glad we have a bus shelter back, but that was a disgusting move. Anyway, folks, this has went way too long. So let's just talk about real quick, and I may make this a second video. If you don't care about all my rantings, you can just hear about these new candidates. So I just want to kind of go down the list, and I don't have them in any particular order. I have a list in front of me here of all the candidates, and I just want to talk about my take on them and if I think you should vote for them or not. And maybe I'll make some of these people mad, maybe I'll make some of them happy. I don't know. I'm going to give you the scoop on these people, though, from my perspective. My opinion, not the city's opinion. You don't have to listen to me, but I'm going to give you a little bit of input. Starting with Martin Howe. So I'm sure a lot of you, especially if you're on my group here, where you're probably watching this video, probably read my reasoning for why I did what I did with Martin Howe and how I regret how that turned out. So as a candidate for city council, okay, so I'll give Martin Howe a little bit of positive and a little bit of negative here. The condition the city was in at the end of Martin Howe's run as city manager, I'm not happy with. So from that perspective, I would not support Martin Howe. But that comes down to a question of, do you blame Martin Howe or do you blame the councils that were above him for how they were directing him? Because I don't believe he's a bad city manager. And I wasn't in the room. I wasn't there. So I don't know where things went wrong. Things were very wrong, but I don't know where they went wrong. But I'm not going to blame the man for everything. If he put in an application tomorrow to be the city manager again, would I say that's a great idea, let's hire Martin Howe? I'm not sure. However, city council is a different animal. Martin has more knowledge and understanding of how this city is supposed to run than any of these candidates, or maybe any candidate in the history of Clarksburg politics. So would I give him the keys to the city again to run everything? No, probably not. Not unless he proved something to me another way. But do I feel like Martin is qualified to be one of 7 and give his input and give his ideas and be part of the workings of how, you know, a representative government is supposed to work? Absolutely. Like, how can you even argue that? The guy is at a completely different level of anyone else. Personally, in my opinion, the best candidate in this race. You can agree or disagree with the past, but as one of 7, as a member of city council, I don't see how you can't see the value in this guy. It would be very difficult for me to understand how you can't see the value in this guy. Moving on next to Hattie Wright. So my take on Hattie Wright is, I think she's very smart. I think she's worked very hard during this election. I think she's going to be very dedicated. She has connections to the city that I think are important. She's definitely going to be in for the long haul. And her outside qualifications, you always have to look at people's outside qualifications as what they bring to council. A financial planner, I mean, financing is not one of Clarksburg's strong suits. And I can tell you now, we don't have any CPAs or financial planners on that city council. And if you're handpicking, if city council was a video game and you were designing the best characters to be on your imaginary city council, I feel like one of those people would have to be a financial expert, right? So for those reasons, Hattie Wright is a very, very strong candidate in my opinion. There's maybe like 4 or 5 that I think are very good candidates. So I'm not going to rank them in any way. You pick your 3. I'm just giving my opinion on them. Tim Gentilozzi, next one on my list. I don't have these in any particular order. Tim Gentilozzi, once again, you have to look at people's outside knowledge that they bring into council. This guy's a lawyer. He's a real estate broker, I believe, still. He owns multiple businesses downtown. Tim can be a little to the fringe on some ideas sometimes, but as far as if you're looking at his qualifications, once again, just like I said about the last 2, it's hard not to see how, as one of 7, Tim could add a lot to the city council. He also is very outspoken and won't take crap from anyone. And, you know, there's not a lot of that on this council, folks. You're losing me. You need to have somebody else on there who's got a big mouth and is willing to say what's wrong. And Tim's looking pretty good for that spot. Tim's looking like he could be the loud opposition candidate, which I feel like he would have direction and perspective also. Like, Tim's a dreamer, man. Look at that park he built downtown. I mean, this guy's not just going to stay between the lines and try not to make anybody mad, or try to agree with people or be afraid to disagree. Like, this dude is going to be coming up with big ideas and taking big swings, and I like that. I mean, that's just my opinion. Next, Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson, as the kind of political person that I am, and his profession and his background, he's not the kind of person that I would normally support. But let me tell you, folks, watching him during this election and hearing him speak and the positions he's taking and the dedication and I think motivation that he will have, he's pretty near the top of my list. When we first, you know, your opinions change about people over time, but when we first started this, you know, we did that first poll on my group and stuff, he was not in my top people. But as this has gone on, I think Mark Jackson would be a very, very strong council person. Once again, I don't agree with him on every issue. And, you know, with my pretty well-known problem with a lot of, you know, I'm probably going to make some people mad here, but I'm good at that, drug programs and homeless programs and stuff like that, and how I think maybe they intend to work, but sometimes they backfire. I feel like me and Mark are pretty opposite on those things, probably. But the dude is so good for all the other reasons that as one of 7, I'm not sure he isn't one of the best candidates here. So I'm going to give him the seal of approval. So far, I've pretty much given all these people the seal of approval. So you're just getting my opinion on them. I guess based on what I'm saying, how do you feel about it? Pick your 3. Chad Sigmund's the next one. I've supported him kind of since the beginning. And a lot of my reasoning for that is I think a lot of people come into city council pretty naive. And Chad is not naive because he's already been on the council. My problem with Chad is, if I'm giving a positive and a negative, he's maybe, when I compare Chad to myself, he's maybe a little bit too much of a nice guy. And maybe that's a positive for you guys. A lot of you don't like me because I'm such a jerk. Okay, fine. I'm fine with that. Chad knows what needs done, though, I think. And I think has the abilities and the knowledge to get some things done. I just hope he can be a little bit rough and stand his ground. Now, I'm going to give him credit. During this election, he has brought up things that I don't think any other candidate has had the balls to get into. And he spoke out against things he didn't agree with. And Chad has silenced a little bit of my problems with him in the past. And, you know, Chad has a great history, too, of wanting to beautify the city and really being someone who cares and just being a nice guy and a family guy. I mean, once again, it's hard for me to say anything bad about Chad other than, if I'm giving you some advice, Chad, you're getting a little better with speaking your voice and speaking your mind and letting people know how you feel. Go 10 times further, man. Be a little bit more like me. You don't have to be just like me and make everybody mad, but be a little more like me, be a little rougher, and you'd actually be one of the top people here. You're still definitely one of my top people, just because I think you have the potential. Mary Mayor's next. I don't know Mary Mayor that well. I am not impressed with things that happened on the council when Mary Mayor was on the council. However, once again, you have to look at people on this council as one of 7 and what do they bring to the table. And Mary brings experience, and she brings a voice to Public Works, which Public Works needs a voice sometimes because, as I've seen in my time on council, for however many years in the past, this Public Works department has been treated like crap. Like they haven't been given budget, they haven't been given money, they haven't been given upgraded equipment. They've been, you know, treated like crap by council. And maybe when we're on such a lower budget than councils of the past were, I don't see how we can find money to do things, but these past councils couldn't give them anything. I mean, so the positive about Mary Mayor is, once again, she's got some experience, so she's not going to come in completely naive, and she gives a voice to Public Works. Her husband works at Public Works. Maybe you see that as a positive, maybe you see that as a negative, but it is what it is. As one of 7, and the fact that Public Works gets no support from the council in some cases, especially in the past, in my opinion, maybe that's not a negative thing. Maybe Mary Mayor is a good choice if you see that as a big problem. Tyler Hart. I'm not going to get into Tyler Hart. We've had some very public disagreements. He said some things that set me very much the wrong direction. I'm not going to repeat those things, and I'm not going to say anything negative about him because I think it's the wrong thing to do right now. But I'm just going to move on. Tyler Hart is running for city council. That's all I'm going to say. Andrew Banco. Boy, this is a complicated one. If Andrew Banco was not related to Jimmy and Lily and a completely independent candidate in this election, I feel like he would be one of my top people. He's young. He seems like he's got a little bit of a dreamer attitude. He's definitely intelligent. He's an entrepreneur, a business owner. He's a teacher. He's a coach. I mean, go on and on and on. Other than nepotism and being related to Jimmy and Lily, I don't have anything bad to say about this kid. If it was a different situation and Jimmy and Lily weren't on the ballot, I'd probably vote for him. You just have to decide as a voter if you're okay with 3 members of a family possibly being on council. It's problematic. So anyway, without saying too much more about this guy, once again, I have nothing negative to say about him. All positive. except for his connections in this election. If he was the sole member of this family in this election, I'd probably vote for him. Let's end it at that. Lily Junkins. I'm going to take kind of the same position with Lily that I took with Tyler a second ago. I don't really have anything nice to say, so I'm not going to say anything. If you know Lily personally, you know she doesn't hide it. She is who she is. If that's what you want, vote for her. With by all means, it is what it is. If you think that she's the right person for the job and you like what we've been doing and you like the things that I've brought up on my page and the things that I've talked about a little bit here today, I don't know what else to say. Just go ahead and vote for her. You know, there's too much anger in my heart for me to even talk about her as a candidate, though. So let's just move on to Jimmy. Jimmy Marino. I talked about him kind of good in the beginning of this video, and you're going to hear me talk about him kind of good again. I'm going to sound like I'm on the fence here, because I am. Jimmy has been a bad mayor. Jimmy's a bad leader. Jimmy is not good at coming up with an agenda. Jimmy is not good at getting people behind him and rallying support and counting votes. Jimmy's bad at all those things. However, in fairness, and just the fact that I want people out there to know that I tell it like it is and I'm not just all negative. Like I said good things about Jimmy at the beginning of this video, and kind of along the same lines of what I said about Martin Howe. Other than Martin Howe, Jimmy is the most qualified of these candidates. I would put him number 1 or number 2, depending on how I looked at it and what day of the week it was. And Jimmy Marino is a good man. And for the most part, Jimmy wants what's best for the city of Clarksburg. Now, I don't know that he's always done things the right way. And I feel like, once again, maybe you're like me and you don't want to vote for Jimmy just because of the nepotism and the voices around him and the people always leading him to do bad things. But there's a lot of darkness in Jimmy. Aside from all the good things I have to say about him, their vendetta is not over. There are still city employees that he's very much wanted to get rid of, and he just hasn't had the support to do it. Now we got a new city manager coming in and some new council people, and I'm not sure if Jimmy stayed in there, in worst case scenario, if he somehow was able to get these people to keep him as the mayor, even for one more year. If Jimmy stays in control and stays on this council, it's absolutely possible that he could convince a couple more people to fire at least 3 or 4 people. And I'm not talking like bottom level people. I'm talking top level people. Like, Jimmy wants to get rid of people. That's from conversations that we've had, and, you know, believe me or don't believe me, I'm telling you, if Jimmy continues to be in charge and he gets a favorable amount of votes in there, he will do more bad things like he's done in the past. If he has the power and you give him like a mandate of the voters that you're giving Jimmy the power, he's going to go in there with an even bigger head than he has already and feel like you've given him permission to go ahead and fire these people. And he'll do it, folks. We got a new city manager, and if Jimmy has the right group of council people around him, he will have control of her so quick. If you just understood how this family works, there will be an attempt to control this city manager. Jimmy's going to be out giving her, he's already had her out in the car, giving her tours, I think, and driving her around and showing her stuff. And, you know, he'll be her best friend and, you know, the knowledgeable one that can tell her the right way to do things. And I don't know her at all. I mean, we did interviews, but she seems like she's probably too smart and it won't work on her. But it's worked on others. You know, feel like you owe Jimmy something. Jimmy's going to be your best friend and take over, and he will manipulate you. But however, once again, that's the negative, but it's not all negative about Jimmy. Like I said, some good things about him. If I could put Jimmy on this council without Lily or anybody else related to him, I think he'd be a very, very valuable member to continue to stay on this council. The surrounding problems and the nepotism and the issues and the fact that he just gets a little bit power crazy are the problem. It's not Jimmy the person. Jimmy is, like I said, probably the most, if not the second most qualified person on this list. It's the second level things I don't like about him that are the problem. It's not his knowledge or intelligence or any of those things. It's the connections and the problems and the times he's went too far and the things I know that he will do if he gets the power again and gets people like me out of his way. It's, you know, and that's it. I'm done. That's my assessment of these candidates. You can take it as a grain of salt, take it or leave it. You know, you don't have to take my opinion. It's very important though, folks, you get out there and vote. You don't have any reason to complain or any right to complain if you don't go out there and vote. And, you know, I hope that my video was not the only piece of input you've taken in this election. I hope you've read things on the internet and things in the paper, and I hope maybe you made it out to one of these meet the candidate things, or I hope one of these people or a couple of these people came and knocked on your door and actually spoke to you so you actually know some things about them. I really look forward to the election moving to the county election, more people being involved and more attention, and hopefully a little better voter turnout, especially this election, a one-year election. I think it's going to be an atrocious turnout. I could be wrong. We'll see. I think it's going to be terrible, though. It's going to be a very low turnout. And I just wish people took more pride in trying to fix the problems with the city and actually cared a little bit more. And I hope we make some decisions to go the right direction. We don't go back down the road where we were previously, or even the road we've been on the last 2 years, which has been just a useless waste of my time and a waste of your time and the taxpayers' time and the voters. It's just been 2 years has been a waste of everyone's time. And I guess that's all I got to say. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to working on my boat, and hopefully you had a nice little conversation, not too serious here, sitting in a lawn chair in my garage. And hopefully I gave you some interesting information that, whether you like it or not, you can put it into your bucket of information and process it how you like. Anyway, y'all have a nice afternoon. The weather's beautiful. I am not going to sit on the computer or do anything else. I will be outside. Have a nice day.